Scientists in India are accusing the government of ignoring warnings of new, more dangerous variants of the coronavirus. A forum of advisors says that ministers failed to impose large-scale restrictions despite the alert in March. Mass political and religious rallies have since been cited as super-spreader events. A second wave of COVID-19 has left India battling record numbers of deaths and infections.
India is struggling as the pandemic's second wave crashes over the country. Death and desperation are spreading. So too is the fear that the government can't stem the surge and end India's suffering.
When the cases started rising up, I thought government had a plan, but turns out they didn't. Within the first week, I understood that the governments have no idea. They're not prepared for anything. We don't have enough ventilators in one hospital. Forget about all the whatever we need for the entire city or the entire nation.
In just one example, 12 COVID-19 patients died this weekend when a hospital in the capital ran out of oxygen supply for nearly an hour and a half.
One of the mainstays of treatment for COVID patients is oxygen. They need support because they desaturate. So across the city, there is an increased demand in the hospitals.
A court in Delhi says it will start punishing government officials for failing to deliver life-saving items. But it's impossible to give what is not yet available. The international community spent the weekend sending supplies. Grieving loved ones and scientists blame elected officials for the worsening situation. They accuse state and federal governments of ignoring medical advice and warnings about variants.
We need to change the government. And maybe in the election mudinja result on the kapro, they could like change things around. I don't know. So I'm just hoping, they stick to their words.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his ruling Hindu Nationalist Party may be paying the price for their handling of the virus. They suffered an upset in West Bengal and failed to make gains in two other key state elections. A sign that Modi's political strength may be slipping as the pandemic tightens its grip.
And let's go now to our correspondent, Manira Chowdhury, who is joining us with The View from Delhi. Manira, we heard it just there. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi suffering a defeat in key state elections on Sunday. How angry are people over the government's handling of the pandemic?
Well, the national ruling party, the BJP, was really eyeing the state of West Bengal, which it lost yesterday. But it will be a little too far-fetched to say that this happened because people were angry with the way the ruling party handled the COVID situation, because a point to note here is that most of the polling phases in the state were over by the time we saw the second wave unleashing to its full capacity and we saw the consequences. It was only the last two polling phases which perhaps could have been impacted by the way the government handled the situation. The loss of BJP in the state has more to do with the fact that the local population there did not agree with BJP's style of politics or their style of campaigning. But one thing could be said for sure, Sarah, is that this defeat is a major setback for the BJP at a time when it's facing a lot of criticism for the way they have been reacting to second wave.
Absolutely. A lot of accusations of pandemic mismanagement. How are they responding to that?
Well, we have not seen any direct responses coming from the government to these allegations. What we are seeing instead is a political blame game beginning. We are seeing a lot of it happening in the national capital, Delhi, which is the worst hit state. It is still struggling when it comes to the lack of oxygen, the lack of hospital beds. What we are seeing is that, and as the critics suggest, the government has not really been responding to a lot of pertinent questions which are being raised.
So what happens now? We have to ask, because we understand that the COVID-19 task force has pushed for a nationwide lockdown. Could we see that happen?
Well, yes, the key members of the task force reportedly have been pushing the government to impose a nationwide lockdown. The Supreme Court has also been suggesting the same. In fact, last week we saw Dr. Anthony Fauci, the most reliable voice when it comes to COVID from the US, also suggesting the same. In an interview to one of the publications here. But we're not very certain whether the government will take this call so far or not, because we saw what happened last year. The economy was impacted a lot, people lost jobs, and the government may be concerned about the backlash which will come if they do impose a nationwide lockdown. But it's a fast-changing situation. We're not sure of the decisions that will be taken in the coming few days.
Are there any lessons to be learned from the way that it has been handled so far, Manira? Because we're hearing these reports that the government had, in fact, been warned by a forum of scientific advisors about a more dangerous variant back in March, but that warning was reportedly ignored. Why?
Well, yes, there have been accusations that we had a year to learn from this crisis when we were going through the first wave, but clearly the facilities, the arrangements which could have been made were not made. And this forum of scientific advisors have come out and said that they warned the government and the health ministry in early March that we will see a major spike in the number of cases, that this particular mutant virus, this particular strain is a lot more contagious than what we saw last year. But clearly, as they are suggesting, these warnings were not paid heed to. In fact, at the same time, we saw the government, the ruling party, also organizes massive election rallies in the state of West Bengal. And there have been accusations that the government perhaps gave more priority to the state elections than to the pandemic.
DW correspondent Manira Chowdhury in Delhi. Thank you.